we predicted 50 to 80% of the city of New Orleans will be underwater for days or weeks. This is a disaster in the making. Get out of town. Nobody can misinterpret a forecast like that.
With us today, we have Dr. Joel Myers, the founder and executive chair of AccuWeather. Joel, welcome to Sandbox.
My pleasure. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, it was great to meet you in Davos. And I know we plan to have the conversation over there, but as we've mentioned, it's better late than never. And there's a lot to talk about, especially between our two companies. But let's really start from the beginning, because you started AccuWeather back in 1962. The world was very different back then. I think you were still a grad student. And over the past sort of few decades, you've been able to move the weather or the prediction of the weather from back in the day was maybe a day or two in advance, and now we have almost 14 days of accurate weather. So if you can take us a little bit through your story of starting AccuWeather and seeing how it progressed to where it is today.
Well, you're correct. When I started AccuWeather as a second-year graduate student back in 1962 at Penn State, the weather forecasts were almost entirely from the government, and they were just tonight and tomorrow. There was an attempt twice a week to give a general outlook 3 to 5 days ahead. It wasn't very good. It was very general. And I got the idea of becoming a weather forecaster when I was 7, and when I was 11, the idea of developing a company, combining my burning desire to be a weather forecaster with my entrepreneurial spirit, went off to Penn State and got a tremendous education there. It turned out Penn State had the best meteorological program in the world. And Penn State gave me great mentorship. And as I said, I got my first client in 1962, forecasting day by day for ski areas, 5 days ahead, and then for energy companies, utilities, and so on. Now, at first, people thought I was nuts. I say, forecasts are free, and how could you beat the government? And so I had to call 25,000 prospects before I had 100 paying customers. But I kept at it. One thing about me is I just continue. I'm relentless. When I believe in something, I don't give up. And so obviously it took me 10 years to get 100 paying customers, but there I was, and I started hiring my best students, because I was teaching then at Penn State, basic weather forecasting. And so just kept expanding, hired my best students, and we've grown in 61 out of 64 years without taking any outside money, just generating internal cash by the great products we provide.
Amazing story. So it's almost like, weather forecasting has been your destiny from very early on.
I guess it has. I fell in love with snow when I was 3 years old, and that was it. And I've been fortunate to contribute a lot to the field of meteorology and to obviously create jobs for a lot of people at AccuWeather. We have well over 400 employees, and when I stopped teaching at Penn State, I had taught 17% of all the weather forecasters in the United States their basic skills in weather forecasting, because Penn State had for many years the largest program, and I taught this basic course for 21 years. So I've been very fortunate in my life, and AccuWeather has saved over 12,000 people, 12,000 lives, prevented injury to over 100,000 people, and saved companies and businesses well over $100 million. So very gratified to have a tremendous team of people here that are dedicated to this mission. So I've been blessed my whole life.
No, 100%. So one thing, one synergy that I think we have between sort of AccuWeather and Sandbox is, and in a way you've been on that path for a while, is following the ChatGPT moment when large language model came into being. Everybody were amazed by what AI can do. But what we've noticed, and I think the rest of the industry has noticed, that there is a ceiling to what LLMs can do. So the approach of using the governing rules of the universe, using maths and physics to predict, is something that you guys have been doing for decades. but now the industry is only moving into that direction. So if you can talk us a little bit about how you're leveraging AI and simulation in order to improve prediction, and if I can ask, do you believe that we'll be able to relive in a way the back to the future moment where we could predict the weather to the second?
Well, you asked a lot there. It may take me an hour to unpack it all, but let me try and give you answers to several of the implications of what you said. First of all, weather forecasting is very scientific. It's a combination of physics and math, and the models that model the atmosphere run on supercomputers started back in the 1950s, became more and more sophisticated, and they take in all the data from around the world, observations from the surface and radar and satellite and all types of information from airplanes and whatever, and put it into a model and uses the most advanced physics and math and differential equations to solve the equation as best they can. Some of the terms have not been solved yet by the mathematicians, so we have to estimate some of the numbers and all, but they become more and more sophisticated. But the most models put out, the winds at 18,000 feet and 5,000 feet and different things like that. But we all live within 10 feet of the surface of the earth. So it's taking that information, and that's always been the skill. And different models say different things. We get 192 models from around the world, and none of them say exactly the same thing. So it's taking all those models and translating them into forecasts to help people make the right decision. So our forecasts, AccuWeather's forecasts, have been proven to be the most accurate. And that is achieved by many different factors, by using what was the concept of AI before it was called that, from the 70s and 80s. By, for example, one example, I found in teaching a class of 40 students that, and giving them a forecast problem day after day, and by the end of the semester, the best forecaster had only 300 errors, and the worst had 1,400. But if I took the average of the 9th and 10th rated forecaster out of a class of 40, that would beat the number one forecaster. So I hired my very best students, who was 1, 2, 3 in the class, put them together, not only averaged it, but a collaborative process to get an even more accurate forecast than any individual forecaster could do. But the value of the forecast goes beyond predicting 85 or 86 for New York City. We can win that game, but then it's communicating it effectively. And so we study and refine the art and science of prediction. And because everything about a weather forecast is in the future. It's how well you make the forecast, and there's uncertainty about a prediction. We realize we're making a prediction, and we look at the forecast how it's going to look 36 hours or 48 hours after the event has ended. A snowstorm is coming, and we say, okay, how much is going to be? And we get all the best minds together and all the sides and predict for New York City 8 to 12 inches. We put that amount in the forecast before anybody else. Other people want to wait till they have more certainty. And then they put a number in, and 4 inches, 6 inches, and they raise it to 16, and then they jump back to 8. As every new model comes in, there's got to be continuity. We minimize volatility. There's so many aspects to forecasting to build trust and cause people to make the best decision. Evacuating, do we evacuate or not? Telling people what they need to know to get out of harm's way with enough notice. So we can talk about statistics. AccuWeather, for example, a tornado forecast of a 5-year study, we provide an average of 16 minutes advance notice of a tornado hitting a certain point. The government, the National Weather Service, only gives an average of 8 minutes. That's an average, so 16 versus 8. And we have a false alarm rate that's 77% less than the government. So you don't get false alarms, you're going to believe more the real events that are coming, which we give more advance notice. Or if there was a hurricane the year before, like there was in New Orleans, and before Hurricane Katrina that completely flooded the city, and it was a false alarm, and then this hurricane's coming, and the Hurricane Center doesn't play it up enough, people aren't going to get out of harm's way. So we predicted 50 to 80% of the city of New Orleans will be underwater for days or weeks. We know what it is to cry wolf. This is disaster in the making. Get out of town. Nobody can misinterpret a forecast like that. Now, our competitors, people on TV and so on, meteorologists said, hey, we're rabble-rousing, we're crazy, and this and that. Well, even the head of the National Hurricane Center said to President Bush, ignore AccuWeather, they're creating a commotion. Well, it turned out we were exactly right, cited by Congress for what we did. So AI helps every business with efficiencies and streamlining certain things, improving the quality of certain products, but it hasn't had the new AI that's appeared on the scene the last couple of years has not had a dramatic effect on AccuWeather because we already were ahead of the game on all that. So AccuWeather is already up here providing the forecast. So there's not a lot that we can use it for to improve subtleties in different places, and we are wherever it can be. But other fields, the change has already been dramatic.
Interesting. So one thing that I wanted to ask, and this is from your book, Invisible Iceberg, which I find sort of interesting because in a way, it brings weather or prediction of the weather more than just a prediction of what you're going to wear in the coming week. Because in a way, you break it down through the scientific underlying phenomena that actually caused and created, in a way, some of those strategies. And, there's explanation that you talk about the Titanic or the Challenger space shuttle. And you explain the specific phenomena that happened over there. And if we had those predictions back in the days, maybe the Titanic won't be where it is right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the case of the Titanic, it's interesting that the iceberg and so on. In that case, the weather caused the light beam because it was an inversion. So what looked like a small iceberg was a much bigger iceberg to the observer, and they couldn't get. The person was supposed to go on the journey. It didn't, and he left the binoculars locked up, and so the lookout didn't have the best. And a variety of occurrences, some by accident, led to a tragedy. In the case of the Challenger disaster, it was just too cold. They never launched the rocket with temperatures below freezing before, and the manufacturer said, don't do it. And somebody just said, oh, we'll be okay. And of course we weren't. So the weather conditions and sometimes the weather forecast play big roles and have played huge roles in the evolution of humanity.
And just before we finalize it, we did talk a lot about the AI because that's the talk of the day nowadays. And you mentioned that for weather prediction, there's a lot of art and science that goes along with it. But as AI takes more of the stack, so it's taking the technology stack, it's taking the operational stack, and to a certain degree, it may soon take the executive stack. So you'll have an artificial intelligence managing the company floor to ceiling almost. We're not there yet, but that's the trajectory that some people believe in. So from a weather forecasting perspective, as you mentioned, the art part of it, with more AI coming in, does the human become more important or less in your field?
Well, the human still has an important role at AccuWeather, but it's evolved continuously through creativity, innovation, so other tools. And that's really the hallmark of any company for long-term success. You have to be looking ahead. You have to be adjusting. The jobs and what people do have to continually evolve. Clearly, AI is being used wherever it can be to make efficiencies, to improve the quality of products, to help our experts make better decisions, make them faster, and replace their decisions where they can. So certainly, this is revolutionary. It's the greatest invention, been called the greatest invention humanity's ever invented. So who might argue with that? We're certainly using AI wherever and wherever possible, wherever we can, to improve what we do, to improve the value of what we do. And clearly it's going to continue to evolve, and AI is going to continue to be involved in all the things that we're doing to make our products more valuable. Is it going to, competitors, the government and so on, are they going to improve as well? Absolutely. So we always have to stay ahead, but we've always, that's always been our game. So it's always a challenge. And, we always want to be the winner, and we always want to be better and learn from whatever's out there or whatever ideas there are. Everything doesn't have to be invented here, although we've obviously invented a lot of things. And that's our culture, that's our mode. And so I don't know what the future will bring. I just know that we're working very hard to be an important component of it. While we sell historical data and current conditions and power a lot of different sources of information behind the scenes, it's really mainly about the value of forecasts and making them as valuable and useful as possible to business, to consumers, and we're delighted that we have so many people who depend on us, who rely on our forecasts, who make major decisions, life and death decisions sometimes, based on our forecasts. But that's an awesome responsibility that we have. We take it very seriously every day because it's humbling to think of all the people who depend on us for so many different decisions that they make. So I've been blessed, as I say, by having so many dedicated people. We've had nearly 40 people that have worked here 40 years or more, dedicated their entire career at AccuWeather, are part of our culture and our commitment. And so I've been blessed my life, and thanks for the opportunity to tell our story.
Fantastic. Dr. Joel Myers, thank you for talking with us. Fantastic conversation.
Thank you very much. Be well.